Welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, and today we're going to be continuing the GettleGone miniseries. And if you're new to the series, this is the series where we break down all of the general manager candidates that could potentially take over for the New York Giants this offseason, with, of course, Dave Gettleman announcing his retirement this week. The Giants are now in the market for a new general manager, and of course, they fired Joe Judge as well, so they're also in the market for a new head coach. Whole clean sweep. House has been cleaned for the Giants, and now they got some real upgrades to make and a couple big positions to fill. So today we're going to be discussing Adam Peters. He is currently the assistant general manager and vice president of player personnel for the San Francisco 49ers, and he is definitely one of the strongest and most popular general manager candidates on the market right now. There's a few teams that are heavily interested in Adam Peters, and the Giants are actually one of those teams. They have added him to their candidate list. They're going to be doing an interview with him within the next week or so, and I think that he is really a top 3 candidate that the Giants are considering. So let's break him down. We'll go through his NFL career history, his strengths, his weaknesses, and I'm also going to add a list of players that Adam Peters is credited with finding in the NFL draft, because we'll talk about this in the strengths, but he is one of the best scouts and talent evaluators in the NFL, which might be exactly what the Giants need. So, starting off with his NFL career history, he actually does have New England Patriot ties, which I know some Giants fans don't want. They don't want anybody who's associated with the Patriots and Bill Belichick, because that clearly hasn't worked out for the Giants in recent years. However, this guy's a lot different. He isn't really one of those Belichickian general manager executives from the Belichick tree. He's really his own breed, and he's very analytical and data-driven and forward-thinking, so not really one of those hard-ass Belichickians. So New England Patriots from 2003 to 2008, he started off there as a scouting assistant and then became a pro scout from 2003 to 2008, and then he was an area scout in 2006 to 2008. So he really isn't, high up in the Patriots front office. This was just the beginnings of his career, starting off scouting some players. But then, of course, he went over to the Denver Broncos, and this is where Adam Peters' career really started to take off and where he started to gain a lot of notability and a lot of recognition, because he's part of some teams. He won a Super Bowl over in Denver, Super Bowl 50, and we all know how amazing that defense was. They found a lot of great talent in many of those drafts that Adam Peters was a part of, including finding Von Miller. He actually does get quite a bit of credit for the Von Miller selection. Of course, Von Miller being one of the best pass rushers in the NFL over the last decade, really one of the best players in the league. Von Miller, arguably a Hall of Famer at the end of his career. So Denver Broncos from 2009 to 2016. He was a regional scout in 2009, became a national scout from 2011 to 2013, was the assistant director of college scouting from 2014 to 2015, and then became the primary director of college scouting in 2016. So over the time that he was in Denver, he spent a lot of time there. They signed DeMarcus Ware while they were over there. Apparently he had some say in that. He was pretty heavy on the pass rusher department from what I was reading. Shane Ray is another player that they drafted, and of course, as I mentioned, Von Miller, one of the best players in the NFL. So he did a lot of scouting there, gained a lot of recognition, and eventually was found by the San Francisco 49ers and was given a pretty big pay grade increase and brought up to a pretty big promotion of vice president of player personnel. So now that's no longer just director of college scouting, player personnel, vice president of that. You're doing college scouting and you're doing pro scouting. You're really taking a look at all of the talent across the league, and you're really giving a whole lot more on your plate. And absolutely, Adam Peters has crushed that role since 2017 with the San Francisco 49ers, being a vice president of player personnel, continuing to do all of the scouting and talent evaluating. He's really gained recognition as one of the best talent evaluators in the NFL, so that really segues us right into the strengths portion of the Adam Peters breakdown. The number one strength for Adam Peters is his scouting and talent evaluation. If you look up Adam Peters at all, you're going to see plenty of articles. Top of the Google search bar, there's just going to be a ton of articles talking about why he is arguably the best talent evaluator in the NFL. And in fact, Matt Lombardo of NJ.com recently did an interview with a league scout, a league executive who is remaining anonymous in the article, but the quote is, "hands down the best evaluator in football," end quote. That's what the league source said about Adam Peters, called him the best talent evaluator in the NFL. And, you look at the track history that he has, the history with the 49ers, especially their recent draft classes, and he's got the names on his draft classes to back up this claim of him being the best talent evaluator in football. And even if you go as far back as his scouting days with the Broncos and with the Patriots, he's been finding gems for years. And one of his biggest gems that he found, 5th round 2017 draft, George Kittle. They had a third-round grade on George Kittle. I watched an interview with Adam Peters, and he talked about the decision-making process in that year's draft, and when they decided that they wanted to take George Kittle, they said that they had a third-round grade on George Kittle. Of course, now we know that should have been a first-round grade, a top 10 grade. George Kittle, are probably the best tight end in the NFL when he's fully healthy. Adam Peters was one of the ones that was really advocating for him in that draft room. He found him. He really, really liked what George Kittle brought to the table, marked him as a third-round grade, and then, of course, they got to the NFL drafts. They were in the third round. They considered taking him, but they called their shot, is exactly how Adam Peters described it. They knew that they could wait until the fifth round to take George Kittle, so they waited, extracted all the value possible, and landed him in the fifth round, and that's all she wrote. Best tight end in football, drafted in the fifth round. What an amazing selection in the 2017 NFL draft, and that's just one example of the many gems that Adam Peters has found in the draft. Of course, Deebo Samuel in the second round. That's an excellent draft pick. I mean, to get a player of that caliber in the second round, I mean, when was the last time the Giants drafted a player of that caliber in the second round? Maybe Xavier McKinney, but the years prior it hasn't been so successful, and that was in the 2019 NFL draft. First round, Nick Bosa. Of course, they had the second overall pick, so that makes things pretty easy. Nick Bosa was pretty much a can't-miss prospect, but then in the second round, to back that up with Deebo Samuel, I mean, that's phenomenal. They got Drake Greenlaw, a solid player, in the fifth round of that draft, and Tim Harris in the sixth round, who's also been a contributor at times, and Mitch Wishnowsky was their punter. They drafted him in the fourth round. I believe he's still the starting punter for that team, so they found a lot of talent, a lot of starters in the 2019 NFL draft, and of course, you go over to 2020, Javon Kinlaw, defensive tackle, has been a solid contributor. Brandon Ayuk has contributed somewhat. And if you go back to 2018, Mike McGlinchey in the first round. Sure, Dante Pettis in the second round didn't pan out. Giants fans, you're familiar with him. But Fred Warner with a 70th overall pick in the third round of that year's draft, taken one selection after B.J. Hill for the New York Giants. Fred Warner, arguably the best linebacker in all of football. Best linebacker in the NFL. Third round draft pick. Noted by Adam Peters and the San Francisco 49ers coaching staff and executive staff. They found Fred Warner and said, this is a guy that we have to have in the third round, and that's all she wrote. Now he's one of the best linebackers in the league, and of course, 1 year prior to that, 2017, this was Adam Peters' first year with the team. DeForest Buckner in the first round, Solomon Thomas in the first round, 2017 NFL draft, interior defensive lineman. They ended up trading him, gaining a massive haul for him, first round picks for him from the Indianapolis Colts, which have then turned into Trey Lance and some other good prospects. So phenomenal job there by the 49ers and Adam Peters pulling that off. And they had 2 first round picks in that year's draft. Also drafted Reuben Foster in 2017. You guys probably all remember Reuben Foster. He was one of the best linebackers in the NFL, super athletic, super talented, but off the field troubles kind of ruined his career in a way. He's not in the NFL anymore, but he did have all the talent in the world, and they identified him with a 31st pick in the draft. And of course, like I mentioned, 5th round pick in that year's draft was George Kittle, so that was a phenomenal draft class for them 1 year in. Reuben Foster, not with the team anymore. Solomon Thomas, not with the team anymore, but trust me, they've extracted every piece of value that they possibly could have out of that draft class, and they really did a phenomenal job in 2017, which was Adam Peters' first year with the team. You take a look at their most recent draft class, 2021, third round pick Ambry Thomas has been really contributing for them towards the latter half of the season, and there's a great video of Adam Peters post-game after Ambry Thomas made a really good play, and they embraced in the locker room, were really, really friendly with each other. He's got a great relationship with the players, which is one of the strengths that I listed. Players love him. If you hear any of the players discuss Adam Peters, they rant and rave about the guy. He's really inspiring, and he really believes in all the players that he selects, and they can feel the belief in him, in all the players. So Ambry Thomas, great pickup in the third round. And of course, Elijah Mitchell, their running back, who rushed for 963 yards and 5 touchdowns this season as a rookie, 6th round draft pick. What did the Giants do with their 6th round draft pick this year? They also drafted a running back, but it was Gary Brightwell. He has barely played for us, and he's basically a special teamer when he's on the field, and he's really not even on the field because he's just not good enough. So bad pick by the Giants there. Phenomenal pick in the 6th round for a running back by the 49ers there, but that's just what you're accustomed to with the San Francisco 49ers. Phenomenal drafting in the middle to late rounds, and of course they always nail their top picks in the draft. So really the 49ers track history under Adam Peters has been probably the best drafting in the NFL since 2017. And another thing that I want to mention in terms of strengths for Adam Peters is coaching connections. Now the San Francisco 49ers have arguably the best coaching staff in the NFL, ran by Kyle Shanahan. We all know Kyle Shanahan, really revolutionary for offenses around the league. Everyone wants to copycat the Kyle Shanahan wide zone offense. And one of the coaches on his staff that could potentially be a head coach paired with Adam Peters is Mike McDaniel, head coach or offensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers right now. He's been explained to be Kyle Shanahan's right-hand man. This is his protege, right? Mike McDaniel is really attached to the hip with Kyle Shanahan. He has learned pretty much everything he possibly could from Kyle Shanahan. And when you're discussing Kyle Shanahan and his offense, how efficient it is, elite running game, great shot plays, passing the football, and you're talking about Mike McDaniel basically being this guy that's learned everything he can from Kyle Shanahan, I mean, you're talking about potentially getting Kyle Shanahan 2.0 if you pair Adam Peters as GM with Mike McDaniel as head coach. You're getting a very forward-thinking, offensive-driven coach as your head coach with Mike McDaniel. And if you go do some research on him, pretty much everybody just describes Mike McDaniel as a genius. Now, he had some off-the-field troubles early in his career, went to rehab, really battled that stuff, but he seems to have come out of it much stronger person now and seems to have really tackled his demons, so to speak. So Mike McDaniel seems to have all of his troubles behind him, and in recent years, he's been a phenomenal coach. He's offensive coordinator for the 49ers, doesn't call plays, but does witness Kyle Shanahan call plays, does help him with play design, game planning, installing, all that stuff. And Mike McDaniel has, as I said, been explained to be one of the smartest minds in the entire sport. Many people calling him a genius from all different aspects, whether you're talking about other league executives and coaches, or if you're talking about members of the media. You can really just find any interview with Mike McDaniel on Twitter or YouTube, watch that, and you're gonna come away from that video very impressed with the way he speaks and how smart he is when it comes to the game of football. I mean, he knows pretty much everything about the sport to a T. I discussed this with Alex on one of our Fireside Giants podcast episodes earlier this week, and he brought up a story about Mike McDaniel with me, and he was discussing how there was an offensive lineman who was on the 49ers, and he was speaking to Mike McDaniel, and Mike McDaniel was talking about offensive line technique. He just really got into it, and the guy was like, how does this skinny, just normal dude, because that's what Mike McDaniel looks like, just a skinny normal dude, how does he know this much about offensive line technique? And of course, he's never played offensive line, Mike McDaniel, but he just knows everything possible about the sport. He's really one of the smartest minds in football. Now, of course, he's pretty young and doesn't really have that much experience as in a huge role. Just kind of being the right-hand man for Kyle Shanahan is really valuable, but he doesn't have that experience being, a manager of a team in any way. So that would be a little bit of a risky selection at head coach for the New York Giants. I think that they're going to play it safe, so I don't know if they're actually going to go ahead with Mike McDaniel as their head coach selection if they do select Adam Peters as their GM, but I do think he'll get heavy consideration. He's getting consideration from other teams around the league. I know the Miami Dolphins are going to interview him for their vacant head coach position, so Mike McDaniel, keep him in mind. Just the coaching connections with Adam Peters as well are super important because he's on that San Francisco 49ers team. He has so many great coaches to really pick from on that coaching staff. Such a great staff with so many phenomenal assistants that are bound to be head coaches one day. So Adam Peters, great coaching connections. I listed that for Joe Schoen as one of his strengths as well because, of course, offensive coordinator for the Bills, Brian Daboll, is also a super popular name for head coaching candidates. And, of course, Ken Dorsey is also a popular name for offensive coordinators. So you've really got a whole lot of names in the Buffalo Bills brass that Joe Schoen could bring over. But now you take a look at Adam Peters, you also have a bunch of great assistant coaches in the 49ers staff that he could bring over as a head coach. So they could build a really nice coaching staff in the New York Giants coaching staff area with Adam Peters or Joe Schoen. Really can't go wrong with either one of them, but that's a huge strength for both of those general manager candidates is the coaching connections that they have. So before we wrap this up, we'll go over his weaknesses, right? And it's kind of hard to find weaknesses on Adam Peters. He is that great of an executive in the NFL. As I mentioned, arguably the best talent evaluator in the league, so it's really hard to find something, dissect his game in a negative way, but he does have a lot of interest around the league. That's something that I put for Joe Schoen as well. That's not necessarily a weakness on behalf of these executives, but it is a weakness in terms of it might be hard for the Giants to actually end up hiring these players. The Giants, by all reports that we're getting, they want to hire Joe Schoen. It seems like he is the man to beat. He's their number one candidate. But it seems like there's other teams that also consider him to be their number one candidate. There's a number of teams that are going after Joe Schoen. I know the Bears are interviewing him. And, of course, there's also a number of teams that are planning on interviewing Adam Peters as well. A lot of teams around the league want these top guys. Joe Schoen and Adam Peters are basically the top guys in this general manager cycle. So a lot of teams are going to be competing to get one of these guys. So as badly as we want them on the Giants and as badly as the Giants might want to hire these guys, there is some competition out there and some other teams that might make better offers or might have more to offer, more appeal in terms of draft capital, cap space, talent on the roster. And so these general manager candidates that we're discussing, as badly as we want them, they might not want us that badly. They might not want to go to the Giants. They might go to another team instead. So that's definitely a weakness. Not really much of a weakness anyway for Adam Peters, but really more of a con. And it's just the fact that the Giants have so much competition in hiring him. But of course, another thing, I'm kind of reaching here. I mentioned how he might be better as an assistant or a scout rather than a full manager because he hasn't really stepped into that manager role yet. He's just recently become an assistant general manager, which I do think is important. He's starting to gain that experience. And of course, one day Adam Peters absolutely will be a general manager. But is he ready to be a general manager right now? I believe yes, others might disagree, but honestly, I do think I'm reaching here. I think that he's ready to be a general manager. He is such a great talent evaluator. I think he would kill it in the GM role. But here's the number one thing for the weaknesses portion. He might not be a good fit with the Giants' line of thinking. Now, the Giants are trying to do this hard reboot, trying to reset, clean house, go with a new general manager to institute a new culture, find his own head coach, and build the team how they like it to. But with John Mara and Giants ownership and the way that some of these other guys who are still part of the front office, still part of the scouting staff, Chris Mara being one of them, there's some guys in here that I don't know if they're really as analytical, data-driven, and forward-thinking as Adam Peters. Because Adam Peters and the way that the 49ers run their team, they're very forward-thinking. They're a liberal mindset, very progressive in the sport of football. And I don't know if necessarily Adam Peters and that line of thinking matches up with what the Giants like, what they prefer, and what they want to do. So if there is a reason that the Giants decide not to hire Adam Peters, it's probably the reason that's going to be cited is they just see things differently. They see the sport a little differently than Adam Peters, and it doesn't line up well with their vision. But if John Mara is going to stick true to his word, just hire the best candidate for the job and let him basically tackle the job however he wants, hire whoever he wants, and run the team however he wants, Adam Peters, man, he's probably the best candidate out there. He's the best talent evaluator. The Giants, 9 picks in this year's upcoming 2022 NFL Draft, 2 picks in the top 10. Super important that the Giants find a really good talent evaluator for this year's upcoming draft. I think this is the most important talent evaluation year, especially now. John Mara explaining that the next general manager has the decision to draft a quarterback if he wants to move on from Daniel Jones if he wants to hire, to trade Saquon Barkley if he wants to. He's giving the general manager full control of the team. So if Adam Peters does step in here with full control, I honestly would probably bet that Saquon Barkley might be on his way out. I would also bet that there's a good chance they move on from Daniel Jones because that's just kind of the way that the 49ers run things and the way that those younger guys, more progressive minds in football run things. They don't emphasize the running back position, so Saquon Barkley likely not going to be with the team in the future if Adam Peters is hired. You have a better chance of that with the Bills, general manager, assistant general manager Joe Shane. I think you got a better chance of keeping Saquon around. Personally, I'm okay with letting Saquon go if it could free up some cap space and they can figure out how to really run the offense without him. But Adam Peters, I don't know if he's the best line of thinking with the New York Giants, the philosophy that they like to institute. However, John Mara says that he wants to give the general manager full autonomy, full control over his position. So if he's true to that word, then I'm totally excited by this. I think that Adam Peters would be a home run selection for the general manager position for the Giants, and I would love to see the new line of thinking that he can bring to the Giants, because personally, I think the Giants' line of thinking is getting outdated, as we've seen in recent years. They've been losing for 5 years straight now. They have not been good since 2016, and even then it was a one-year fluke because of the 5 years prior. Also bad. So I do think that it's time for the Giants to really switch things up, go in a new line of thinking, go in a new direction, and really just change the way that they build this team, the way that they build this coaching staff. And I would love it if the Giants pull from the San Francisco 49ers front office and coaching staff, because the 49ers, I think, are one of the best constructed teams in the NFL. I think that they're phenomenal with the way that they run their coaching staff and, of course, their talent evaluation, which Adam Peters receives pretty much 90% of the credit for anyway. So Adam Peters, I think he might be my number one general manager candidate right now. Maybe not. Maybe he's tied with Joe Shane. I really like both of those guys. We got a couple more names to go through on this GettleGone series. Make sure you leave a comment down in the comment section below on YouTube who you want to see me do next. Of course, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe if you're new, and ring the bell so you never miss a video. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.